Hello, my name is Francisca Idio, and I am doing a audio recording for my assignment 2 project. And for this project, I will be doing the 4 things that stuck with me for Unit 2. And with each of the 4 points, I'll be having I'll discuss other attributes of the points that I thought were interesting in this unit. So, the first point that I'll be talking about is subsidies and subsidized industries and special interests. The second one I'll be talking about is protectionism. The third one that I will be speaking about is trade organizations and the regulations that accompany them. And the fourth topic that was interesting to me was microfinance and microloans. So, beginning with the first subject of subsidies and subsidized industries, I think we can start by saying what subsidies are and answering that question. So, subsidies, in my view of what I've learned, is a type of rent or like a perk that isn't really earned through the market, and they're provided by the government. And although in the government, sometimes they could mean well with subsidizing certain industries. There are many negative effects that may accompany the subsidization of these firms or these companies or these industries. So, um, one negative effect, of subsidies are is anti-competitiveness. And with anti-competition, how subsidies affect that is that when free open market trade goes on and there's no subsidies in the market, people and consumers are able to buy a certain good that may not be produced in their homeland but be sold at a cheaper price. For example, sugar from the Caribbean could be cheaper, imported sugar from the Caribbean could be cheaper than American made sugar. And with that example, too, actually, the sugar industry, along with other agricultural industries, are subsidized in the US. And with that, even though you have sugar that is cheaper from other countries or other regions like the Caribbean, they're taxed and tariffs are put on them, so they seem that like they are higher. And with this, developing countries also suffer because they're not able to compete with these developed nations who do put up these tariffs or taxes on imported goods. So, moving on to the next, or within this topic, moving on to another issue with subsidies is that who pays for these subsidies? And for me, I didn't realize that the people who actually pay for them are the American people or just people in general who pay taxes. And a great amount of those taxes are put towards subsidized industries. And I thought that was really interesting. And I kind of got a little bit mad because I was thinking, like, man, so these industries that are not doing so well, my money is still going to them, even if I'm not going out and purchasing their products. And with taxpayer dollars and putting money into these subsidized industries, it makes these goods that are produced by them relatively more expensive to ones if they were not subsidized. Because if tariffs and taxes are put on imported goods, and that increases the price of that good, subsidies are able to give more money to these not these kind of failing firms and industries, and so they're able to hike up those prices. But even though they hike up those prices for the domestic produced good, as long as it's still lower than the imported good, usually people do not complain about it. And another thing is that subsidies and subsidized industries through special interests, it does not allow the cycle of creative destruction to take place. So for companies to grow and to die, and in order for an economy to truly flourish, you do need dying companies. So the land, the labor, the capital from those quote unquote dead or dying bankrupt companies, they can be put towards other markets that will be used and can increase the economic uh, development of a country. And also, just to kind of tie it into more concrete, I guess, examples. In the United States, I found out, plus learning through class as well as my own research, that some subsidized industries in the U.S. are agriculture and then oil as well. And I thought it was interesting how these two are the two, I feel like, biggest subsidized industries, because I know in certain Middle Eastern countries, and I know Nigeria in Africa is a really big oil supplier. It used to be a really big oil supplier for the international economy, and that in order for the U.S. to still have these oil reserves and to still have people fracking for oil, they would subsidize these industries. So, moving on to our next topic, the second one, which is protectionism. And what is protectionism? And for me, I feel that protectionism is basically any way a country can protect its own economy in order for it to grow. And while this may seem like a good idea, especially for economies that are becoming developed or that are developing, um, there are a lot of negative side effects or consequences to protectionism. And so, with protectionism, how is it used? And I've learned in this unit that it can be used through tariffs, it can be used through trade barriers. And so, with trade barriers and tariffs, this could help with to help execute protectionism, because you are quote unquote keeping the jobs in that domestic country. But the downside to that is that even though you are keeping jobs in your country, you're taking away jobs from other people in other countries. Like, let's say if a technology company that created widgets was outsourced to another country. So if it was a U.S. company and they outsourced to Guatemala, let's just say that, and with protectionism, they made a trade barrier, or they set tariffs on these widgets that were imported into the U.S. Even though it's a U.S. company, it's still made somewhere else. So with this protectionist strategy, um, although consumers will be forced to buy the U.S. made widgets, the people who are working in the factory in Guatemala, they may lose their jobs because of these protectionist ideals and policies and stuff like that. Another thing I found interesting within protectionism is that recently the U.S. kind of uses protectionism or protectionism as a national security kind of solutions, that in order to that foreign competition is actually a threat to our national security, and in order to defend against that, we need more protectionist policies. And I thought that was really interesting.